Okay, we're on the bottom of good luck to everybody. We're on the bottom of Samich Amid Beis. Samich Amid Beis. So we had Reb Shimon Bar Yochai said it did that if a kohen could marry a geyoris who was less than 3 in a day, because even if she had relations, her sulam would be turned. Even didn't speak it out, but that she's not royal labia. She's not considered royal labia. And he said other halachas. What was other halachas? So, could a kohen walk into a non-Jewish cemetery? Can a kohen walk into a non-Jewish cemetery? In other words, we know a kohen can't come to a Jewish cemetery because even though he's not touching the mace, but we know there's tumas oil going ahead and walking over a mace, right? Being tumas oil or the tree transporting it. I mean, there's people, Kahanim, that never use the Interborough Parkway for that reason. Interborough Parkway is next to a cemetery, and the trees go over the Interborough. And Uncle Meir, Eleni, he never used the Interborough because of that reason, because he would go ahead and it would he was very makbid. He never flew El Al. He never flew El Al because he was always concerned that there would be a mace in the cargo area. He was he was a kohen, took it very seriously. So by it comes to an Ovid Kichavim, a guy says there is no tumas oil by a guy. It says Adam ki tamis ba'oil. It says Adam, and we say that what Adam ki yamis ba'oil, not mitam. Adam ki yamis ba'oil, and a guy is not called Adam. A guy is not called Adam. As a matter of fact, this is one of the very questions in the famous trial of the what was his name? The guy in the early part of the century. He was put on trial for
Dreyfus.
What?
Dreyfus?
Not Dreyfus. No, not Dreyfus. It's a Jewish guy, not Dreyfus. In Russia by the Tsar. He's put. My mind's slipping. Anyway, one of the questions they had at that trial was, what's his name? It's at the tip of my tongue.
Melvin something.
No.
Wasn't it Bellis? Bellis?
Bayless, right? Bayless.
Right,
Bayless.
Melvin Bayless. That was his name, Melvin.
Melvin. She's the manager of Arizona, Melvin, Bob Melvin. Now, the Bayless trial, one of the questions was that you don't consider us people. And they brought this out as a question. The pasuk says, Adam ki yamis ba'oel. And they had the questions, they had meant before the trial that all these gedolim thinking out the possible questions that they could have asked. And they got this question. So the Lublina Rav, Meir Shapiro, he answered the question. This is what he said. He says, what is an Adam? Adam is a singular person. He said, if a Gentile was put on trial now, in how many people would come to his trial? How many people would care? Because right now, this person, Bayless, is on trial, and Jews from all over the world are with him. That's Pshat and Adam, that we view ourselves as singular people. Not that a goy is not considered a person, but Adam, when it comes to Klal Yisrael, we are one. That was the answer he gave to explain this pasuk. But very interesting. Anyway, Chalapachas. It says etain soini soimer isi adam atem kruyu adam bein oivik kechavim kruyu adam. You're called Adam, but a guy is not called Adam. Meisive, it says v'nefesh Adam. It says by midyon, and they counted the dead. It says v'nefesh Adam shisha asa elef, and we say that it says we see a guy is called Adam because it's speaking about guy and referring to him as Adam, and that when it says that's el mishum behema. The reason they use the word Adam there is to contrast the animals that were there as well. Masha'en came by when it's singularly Adam by a guy and there's nothing to contrast, they would not call him Adam. Asher yesh b'harbe mishtem esrei riboy Adam asher yada ben yamina l'smailai. This is said by Nineveh and Yonah. There was a large city. It says the Gemara, and you see that it's called Adam the Goyim, and the Gemara mishum behema. That's because again to contrast, because there's behema as well. So we're contrasting Adam versus Behema. But when it's used singularly, we never call the guy Adam. Kol harig nefesh v'chol nageya b'cholol tischato. In the battle of Midian, anyone who touched a nefesh and anyone who touched b'cholol, dead body. In other words, it could have touched cherev haru kecholol, could have touched a sword that would have a din of aviyavas atoma. would have to go ahead and have the paraduma spitzed on him. So so why, if they're not tamei, if the guy doesn't transmit tuma, the havmina is here, the guy doesn't transmit any tuma, why would you have to have the paraduma on you? Says the Gemara, Dilma akdal chad mi Yisrael. Maybe one Jew was killed, right? And maybe one Jew was killed. So maybe what? The reason why they have to undergo the paraduma is because of what? Because of a Jew who was a dead corpse of a Jew. But as a guy, you would not have to. Says the word Rabbanon. How do Rabbanon know? What did they do with the raya of Shimon? It says not one person, no one died in the battle against Midian. They weren't missing one person. Nifgad was not, no person was unaccounted for. So l'chayra, what does that mean? It was no Jew. So the only person that could have been would have been a guy. And nonetheless, what? Reb Shimon ben Yochai lo nifka mimenu ish la'aveira. It doesn't mean there wasn't any dead Jew. There was dead Jews, but there wasn't a Jew accounted for that did the aveira against the Midyanim, would try to seduce the Jewish men, and not one of them gave into their pito, into their seduction. Ravina says, "Nechidam namtinu kroi me'atmuye ba'oyel dichsiv adam ki yom ba'oyel mi maga u'masa mi matinu kra." Doesn't make any sense. In other words, Midian, the reason why they had to undergo what? They had to undergo the process of paraduma to cleanse themselves is because they touched a goyish body. We never said a goy is not matama. We said a goy is never matama transmitting tuma through tumas oil, walking into a cemetery. But tumas maga or masa, carrying a bone of a goy or touching the bone of a goy, of course it's matama. So therefore it's okay. So Rav Shimon by Yochai he stays intact. Now the question is whether halacha is like him or not. That's very interesting. That seems to be a big machlokes. If you look, the Rambam paskins like him. The Rambam paskins like Shimon Bar Yochai that you could walk into a goyish cemetery. But if you look at Tosfos, the third word line down, that's speaking about Tumas Oil. Vayimari, they ain't Allah Reb Shimon. The Allah is not like Reb Shimon. Because Reb Shimon Gamliel argues in one another Gemara. So Tosfos just says the Allah is not like Shimon Gamliel. So nafkamina, use nuj nafkamina. If you're a kohen, can you walk into a goyish cemetery or not? If you hold like the Rambam, yes, you could. If you hold like this Tosfos, you can. Okay. Anyway, we're up to the Mishnah on Samech Aleph Amid Aleph. The Mishnah on Samech Aleph Amid Aleph. New Mishnah again with an idea that we've seen before. Now we know a kohen gadol can marry an almana, correct? So Iris es almana, a kohen hedyot goes ahead and gets engaged to an almana, no problem. A regular kohen could marry almana. He can't marry a gerusha, but he can marry an almana, and in fact he marries her. He gives the kedushin. V'nisman li as kohen gadol. Now he gets the call, and they're going to appoint him as the kohen gadol. Yichnois, right? Then he should go ahead and he can become the kohen gadol. In other words, he can marry her. Yichnois, he can marry her, and he doesn't have to divorce her. Umaisa be Yeshua ben Gamla. There was an incident with Yeshua ben Gamla. Shekidesh es Marta bas Baisus. Was Makadesh is a fabulously wealthy woman, Marta bas Baisus. Umineu Amelach Leo is kohen gadol, and the king appointed him kohen gadol. Vikansa, and despite the fact that she had been an almana, she was a rich widow. Nonetheless, he married her. So the Maisa is substantiating what the psak. However, Shemeres Yavam Shenafel Lefekein Hedyot. A Shemeres Yom falls in front of Kohen Hedyot. So you have a zika of an almana. Her husband died. She's fully in front of a Kohen Hedyot. You have the zika of an almana. V'nisman Aliyah Kohen Gadol, and she's appointed, and now he's appointed Kohen Gadol. Afa Pisha Asa B'Maimer, even if he had done Maimer already, and in other words, he'd taken off the zika part, as we said, and now he becomes what more the kedushin part. Nonetheless, Harizela Yichnois, he should not go ahead and marry her. He would have to divorce. He'd have to give a divorce for the Maimer. And of course, chalitza for the zika. So difference: a regular woman, a regular almana, you could stay married to. Shemeres Yovam, you could not stay married to. The Gemara is going to say it's a drasha. Tanabanan minayin shem iris es almana. How do you know if you go ahead and you accept kedushin for an almana? V'nisman aliyas kohen gadol, and you're appointed gadol sheyichnos. How do you know the first din of our Mishnah? Talmud Leimer, it says yikach isha. The pasuk says. Almana ugrusha the halala zoina es ela lo yikach kim besula me'ama yikach isha. Now he could have just stopped short, guys. If you would have said you can't take those women, but ki im besula me'amav a besula me'amav yikach he should take, we would get the message. You don't have to say the word isha; it's totally extraneous. You besula yikach, you take a besula. So the word isha is totally extraneous, right? So now, why do we do that with that fact that it's extraneous? And for the Gemara, so that's what does that do? That's what Tamalaima Yikach Isha. The word Isha comes to include that you can marry her, even though what you appointed Kohen Gadol. Fred Gemara Yehachi Shemeres Yavam Nami. Let's include Shemeres Yavam, that if you are a Kohen Hedyet, that your brother's almana falls to you and you're appointed Kohen Gadol, also Yikach Isha. It says more Isha v'lo Yevama. It says Isha as an Isha, not a Yevama. So it's a Gzeres HaKosef to be mechalik between the two, to make a distinction between a regular almana and a Shemeres Yavam. Ma'aser b'Yeshua ben Gamla, that Marta Bas Pesos, and she appointed Kohen Gadol. Now she was an almana. Says the Mineu in Nismana lo. The meaning, the difference is, fellas, the following. Mineu is he was appointed by the king. Mashma, that he himself did not have the credentials. It was the king that appointed him. Nismana would have meant that he himself was appointed by his fellow Kahanim. So when the Mishnah says, Maisa, it was a Maisa with Shimon and Gamla, and that was Mekadesh Marta Bas Paisus, Umineu Amelech, it's mashma that he wasn't royal Lekach. And the Gemara says, Amar Rav Yosef, Kater Kachazina Hacha. I see a kater, I see a kesher over here. I see a plot over here. What's the plot? The Amar Avasi, Tirkava de Dinre, a 2 kavim of golden dinorim, idole Marta Bas Paisus Liana Malka, that again, this is during the Chashmonoyim period where they usurped the Malchus after the Hanukkah story. And the Kahuna Gedoyla was a very political position, and she bought it. She bought it for her husband at the Mukilo Yeshua ben Gamla Bekani Ravavi till he was appointed as Kohen Gadol. So it's saying the fact that it make the diak minehu and not in Nismana is showing that what he wasn't royal Lekach. Now there's a machloikis among the Rishonim exactly what's going on over here, because the Gemara in Baba Kama Daf Chaf Aleph tells us Yeshua ben Gamla was a very fine man. As a matter of fact, he instituted yeshiva. He was a very fine fellow. So according to that opinion, even though he was a tzaddik who did this thing, he still was not right to be the Kohen Gadol, meaning there were people who were greater than him. Taisus Shoshanim over here says there were 2 Yeshua ben Gamlas. We have Taisus Shoshanim on the side of the page over here. He says there was another one. If you look at the Aleph, there's a big Aleph in the Taisus Shoshanim on the side. It says the Gam Einze Yeshua ben Gamla. This is not the Yeshua ben Gamla that was in the Sechta. That was metaking Shahaya Babash taking comment to Konesh Shoyset Tzaddik Hoya Ela Achahu. This guy was not a tzaddik. So it was a Chaluki Deis exactly as to his identity. If it was the same one or a different one, bottom line is either way he was not royal Lekach and it had to be bought by his wife Mata Bas Pesos, who was of course famous from the Gemara in Gittin, Nizikin. She exemplified the terrible tragedy at the time. She was so wealthy and she couldn't get any food. She took her money and threw it out in the street and says kesef b'chutzas tashlicha. It was very, very sad story. She either stepped on a piece of dung or she stepped on Rav Tzaddik's date that he had sucked out and she died. Very, very sad story. Anyway, says the Mishnah Baita. Kohen Gadol shemeis achiv chaylitz v'lo miyabim. A Kohen Gadol shemeis achiv, his brother dies. So now she's falling in front of him. So why can't he do chalitza? Because she's an almana. She's an almana. In other words, despite the fact there's a zika, she was married kosher v'yasha to his brother. He's the Kohen Gadol. He's the only game in town. L'chayra, he can't go ahead and do yibum because she's an almana. It says the kapasik v'tani. It says no distinction. Lo shloimina erisin, but lo shloimina nesuin. It doesn't make a difference whether she was an almana from erisin or almana from nesuin. Now, guys, what would the difference be? let's say she was an almana from Nisuin. So she was a Nisua, she was an almana, she was not a basula. So therefore, ein asay dochalo sasay v'asay. The essay of Yevama Yava Alecha cannot be doicha the fact that what? That she's an almana, aloy sasay, and the asay, she's not a basula. So we have a rule. At the beginning of the Masechta, guys, essay dochalos asay. You could wear tzitzis made from shanas, correct? Asay dochalos asay. Good. So now, if she is not a basula and she's an almana, you got two strikes fighting. You have ein asay of yavam yavalaha doichal that you should marry an almana, and she's not a basula. But let's say it was Erisin. She was an almana from Erisin. In other words, your brother married her, never consummated the marriage, never got to the Nisuin stage, and he dies. And now she's falling in front of the Kohen Gadol. So now she is a basula. So why don't we say asay dochalos asay? The asay of Yevama Yava Alecha should be dochal delois asay of marrying almana. Very kasha. Fred Gemara kasha. Kapasik v'tani loishlam in erisin loishlam in Nisuin. Now bishleim in Nisuin, very good if she's an almana and a buula. Asay v'los asayhu. It's an asay of marrying a basula. V'los asay not to marry almana. Vein asay dochalos asay v'asay. El mina erisin. If she's an almana from erisin, so yavay essay. Let the essay of Yevama Yava Alecha come along. V'yitcha es lois asay and be doicha the lois asay what of not marrying an almana, and she is a basula. So why don't we say asay dochalos asay? It says Gemara gzeira biri shayna to be a shniya. It's very interesting that you only would go ahead, right? And the bia rishayna would make is a mitzvah. After that, it's aser. So therefore, we goiza. The reason why we don't do the first bia, you may come to do the second bia. Mishnah continues. Kayin hedyet la yisa islandess. A kayin hedyet should not marry an islandess. Now, an islandess we already discovered is a woman that is incapable of having children. She's incapable of having children, and we said it's not discernible, sometimes only up till the age of 20, and therefore he should not marry her because he has to have children. The Gemara is going to ask, we all, Jews, regular Yisraelim also have to have children, so why do you learn Kayin? The Gemara will ask that question. So Kayin Hedya La Yisa Islandess, Elim Kain, Yeshla Ishu Banim. Unless he has what? A woman, he has Isha and Banim. In other words, if he does have children, and he's Mekayim Pir Vervivya through his other wife, then he can marry an islandess. Even if he has what? Ishu banim, he can't marry an islandess. Lo yisa islandess. Why? Shehi zayna mur b'Torah. When the Torah speaks about a zayna, it's speaking about a woman who's incapable of having children. In other words, Rabbi Yehuda is of the opinion, fellas, any bia has to have the capacity to go ahead and produce a child. If the woman is incapable of having a child, that woman would be a zayna, according to Rabbi Yehuda. We don't pass in that way, but that's the sheet of Rabbi Yehuda. So therefore, you can never marry a zona, even if it's not a peer verivia problem. You got to create a zona problem. If you're a kohen, if you're not a kohen, then you don't have a problem. The chachamim say ein znus ein zona el giyaris or giyaris umeshachraris or an eved that was free, a shivcha that was freed, ushnivala beilas nus or a Jewish woman who had a bia nus to the sin, a mamzer chayve mises, a krisis bezdin, as we discussed. My timer, what's the reason that a kohen can't marry an islandess? Mishum Pierre Verivia, because he's mechoyev to go ahead and reproduce. Says the Gemara, Fred Gemara Kasha, a Pierre Verivia kahanim who the nifkedi, the Yisrael like nifkedi. The only kahanim are mechoyev in Pierre Verivia, and Jews are not mechoyev in Pierre Verivia. Of course they are. Of course they are. So why does the Mishnah say a kohen should marry an islandess, guys? No one should be able to marry an islandess. So Amalei. Since we have to learn the Seifa of the Mishnah, Rabbi Yeshua Omer, Afa Pisha Yesh Isha, even if he has a wife, Amid Beis, Yesh Banim, and he has children, La Yisa Islandis, Shehi Zaina, Hamur B'Taira, the Azayna Kahanim Hu the Mifkedi, Yisrael Le Mifkedi, Mishachik Tani Kayin. In other words, Einachinami, the first din of the Mishnah, not to marry an islandess, you're not limited to a Kayin. It could be a Yisrael as well. However, since the latter part of the Mishnah, the halacha of an island is being a zayna vis-a-vis a kohen, since that is limited to a kohen, and not a Yisrael. So to be consistent, we learned the Reisha as well by a Kohen. But Ein Achinami, no one should marry an islandess because if you don't have children. Rav Huna, my time with the Rabbi Yehuda. What's the reason Rabbi Yehuda holds that that in fact that she is an islandess is a Zaina, because the pasuk says, right? Achlu v'lo yispa'u, you'll eat and you will not be satiated. Hiznu, you'll have relations. V'lo yifreitzu, and you won't procreate. You won't have children. And yifreitzu is from Lashon of Chabad, guys. Ufaratzta, Yom of Kedma. Ufaratzta, you'll spread out, right? You'll have many. So Lashon Pirtza means over here to have many children. Kol bia she'ein ba pirtza, any bia that not produce children, ein ela bilas nus. That's the shita of what of Rabbi Yehuda. Now, Rabbi Eliezer is going to say a din, and the Gemara is going to struggle to find out why, and that's going to be to the end of the daf. So important to get this din that he's saying right now. Tanya, Rabbi Eliezer Omer, Kohen, a Kohen, lo yisa es hakatana. A Kohen should not marry a katana. A Kohen should marry a katana, period. That's it. A Kohen should not marry a katana. Amalei Rav Chisda l'Rabba, poik ayin ba, go look into this. Go look into this, why not? Because in the evening, boy Rav Huna minach, Rav Huna is going to ask you, why not? Why, like Rabbi Eliezer, can a Kohen marry a katana? Again, a Kohen can't marry a katana. Says the Gemara Nafik. So Rabbi went out, v'ayin ba, and he looked into the matter, and he said the following: Rabbi Eliezer sabala kreb meya, v'sabala kreb Yehuda. Okay, outside, guys, outside. This is a very, very famous shita that appears in Shas, that Reb Meir is chayish lemiuta. Reb Meir is always worried about the minority. In other words, we usually go after the roiv. Reb Meir is worried about the minority. So now, most women can have children. Most women can have children. There are a minority that cannot. Most men can father children. There are a minority that cannot. So in this case, if the girl is a katana and you're chayish lemiuta, we have to be suspectful that perhaps she cannot have a child. Good. We have to be suspectful that she can't have a child. Good. So now what's the problem? If she can't have a child and Rebbe Eliezer holds like Rebbe Yehuda, what did Rebbe Yehuda just say? That anyone who can't have a child is considered a Zaina. So the bia of the Kohen Taho would be what? A bia's nus. So you need two factors over here to explain Rebbe Eliezer's shita according to this. This is what Rabbi came up with. Guys, this is what Rabbi came up with. Watch. One, perhaps she can't have a child like Reb Meir. And two, and therefore if she can't have a child, she's a Zaina. And therefore three, the Kohen can't marry her. So that's pshat. Rebbe Eliezer said, Kohen should not marry a katana. That's it. Putting that together would create the problem, says the Gemara. So this is what Rabbi came up with. The problem is we're going to show that Rebbe Eliezer does not hold like Rabbi. He doesn't like Rebbe Meir, and he doesn't like hold Rebbe Yehuda. You know, it's strike two. He holds like neither. Says the Gemara. Poikain v'lurta boila Rav Huna minach nafakai v'rasa savla Rebbe Meir v'savla Rebbe Yehuda savla Rebbe Meir the chayish lemiyuta. So perhaps what she will not be able to have a child. The savla Rebbe Yehuda the Amar island is zaina have an islandess is a zaina. So if she can't have a child, that would make an equivalent to an islandess. In other words, it has to have any bia has to be a bia of Pirzah that can produce a child. Therefore, you can't produce a child, should be a Zaina. And therefore, if she's a Zaina, you can't have relations with her. That would be the way that why we'd explain Rebbe Eliezer says a katana, a kohen can marry a katana. Well, that's a little bit of a problem. Why? Does Rebbe Eliezer hold like Rebbe Meir? Vatanya, kotev v'katana loy cholzin v'loy miyabmin. A cotton v'katana, neither can they have chalitza or yibum. Div Reb Meir. Amolay Reb Meir. Yafa Amrit Shein Chalsin, because the pasuk says ish. So in order to do chalitza, you have to be an ish, and a cotton's not an ish. Kesiv b'parsha umakshinan isha leish, and we make a hekish between the man and the woman. So therefore, if it's not, it has to be an ish, not a cotton, and therefore a cotton and not a katana. It has to be an ish and not a katana. So therefore, I know Lin Chalitza, they're both out of the ballpark. If the brother is a cotton, if the Yavam is a cotton, out, And if the Yevamot is a katana, out. Elamai taima emiyabim. What's the reason you can't do Yibum? So Amalei, so Rabbi would hold cotton, Shema Yimsa Sris, Kitana Shema Timsa Islandis. In other words, that's Chayish Lemiyuta, that the minority, some might be a Sris is incapable of having a child, or Islandis. The Nimsa Poigim Be'erva, and if they have relations, then it's Eishes Ach, right? Then he's living with his sister-in-law. The Tanya Katana Misya Bemes, guys watch. A katana can receive yibum, the einu chayletzes, and she what? And not chalitza. No, he agrees by chalitza, but disagrees by yibum. Einu chayletzes, because he agrees with that hekesh, I guess. Okay, we'll see Rashi in a second. Divrei Rebbe Eliezer. So what do you see, guys? Rebbe Eliezer says he could do yibum. She could accept yibum. But 1 second, if he holds like what? If he holds like Reb Meir, he shouldn't allow it. So clearly, Rebbe Eliezer does not agree with Reb Meir. So clearly, Rabbi's shot in Rebbe Eliezer's cryptic reason why a kohen can't marry katana cannot be correct, because the whole premise was he held like Reb Meir. You see, he doesn't like Reb Meir. Now, just for our own edification, what's the reason the chilik over here? Why no chalitza? Why yes yibum? So look at Rashi, guys. Ve'enu chaletzes, the eina niftera l'shuk bechalitzasa, because his chalitza is not going to matter to the shuk. Why? The ein ma'aser katana klum. A ma'aser that you do with katana is nothing. Why misyabemes? Al misyabemes v'tigda letzloi v'tiskayim mitzvus yibum. But when it comes to what? When it comes to what? To yibum, you go ahead, you do yibum, and then she'll be with him. She'll be with him until she comes of age, and then the kedushin will be a good kedushin. So that's the difference in chalitza and yibum. Bottom line is, clearly Rebbe Eliezer does not agree with Reb Meir. So therefore, we're back to square one. What's the reason Rebbe Eliezer holds a kohen can marry a katana? Ella? No. First, we have to slug him up a little more. Not only doesn't he hold like Reb Meir, he doesn't hold about the identification of a zayna as someone who can have children. Also, he disagrees with. Where do you see that? Ukreb Yehuda misavala v'atanya zayna is zayna kishma. She turns away like her name. Divrei Rebbe Eliezer. Rashi tells us kishma loshin toya. She turns away. Shetoya mitachas baila. She turns away from her husband. La'acherim, for others. Rebbe Eliezer ain't zayna ela eishes ish. Rebbe Eliezer defines the zayna as a married woman who has relations with another man. That's a zayna. So guys, clearly he does not agree with Rabbi Yehuda's what? He doesn't agree with Rabbi Yehuda's pshat in what a zayna is. So now, Rabbi, you're wrong in the Reb Meir part, and you're wrong in the Rabbi Yehuda part. So your teretz why a kohen can marry katana is out. Now the Gemara just goes ahead and gives more perushim what a zayna is. So we've seen two. Rabbi Yehuda's pshat, any woman who is incapable of having a child. Rabbi Eliezer's pshat would be an Eishes ish. Let's get some more pshatim. Rabbi Kiva says, Zayna zu mufkeres. It's an unmarried woman who lives with more than one man, but one B is not going to do it. One B won't do it. Rabbi Masya ben Charish Omer, even the husband can make into a Zayna. She's a suffix saita. She's being brought to Bezdin, and on the way, the husband has relations with her. Us a Zayna. That would make her a Zayna. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Zayna zu aylanis. We already know that. So therefore, clearly what? Clearly that can't be a Zayna. Rebbe Loza changed the gears, the guys. It can't be Rebbe Eliezer because we know his shita. Rebbe Loza Omer, Panei Abal Panuya, an unmarried man that has relations with an unmarried girl, Shaloi L'Shem Ishus, and certainly a married man with an unmarried girl, Asa Zayna, that would make a Zayna. The bottom line is we don't have a pshat in Rebbe Loza. What's the reason Rebbe Loza says that you can't go ahead and marry a katana? Ella Omar Rav Ada Barava Hocha B'Koyin God Laskinon. When Eliezer said that a kohen can marry a katana, it means a kohen gadol. Le'emas kanila. When does he acquire her? Lechi gadla. So now, when she grows up, when she grows up, bu'ulahi, she's a bu'ula, and she has to be a basula. So therefore, this is Rav Ada Barava's pshat. Koyin, remember, it says a Koyin can marry a Katana means a Koyin Gadol can marry a Katana. Why? Because he's going to have relations with her. The Kedushin is going to be Chal when she's older. When the Kedushin is Chal, she's already what? A Bula. Amarava, Machli Lev. Yamamish, you destroy minds. This is a very strong Machli Lev. You're destroying minds. This is like a way of saying your pshat is totally, totally wrong. Either kot shavua, yeah, he's shaita, who the konile. How does this katana get married? Girls, guy, excuse me. Listen, I haven't done it in a while. Guys, how did this katana get married? Either her father married her off or she married herself off. So watch. If her father married her off, is there anyone who could say it's not a good kedushin? He has the ability to marry her off, correct? So Rabbi, you can't be right there. If she married herself off, would anyone hold it's a good kedushin? Not only Rebbe Eliezer, but also would hold it's no kedushin. So your pshat is not a pshat. Says the Gemara. Amar Rava, Machli Leif. Either Kitch Avua, Mahi Shaita, who the Kanila. From the time the father married her off, she's married. The Either Kutcha Nafsha, and she married herself off, her Rebbe Eliezer, it's Rebbe Eliezer, V'lei Rabbanon. Rabbanon also agree her actions nothing. Therefore, we're back to square one. What's pshat in Rebbe Eliezer's cryptic remark that a kohen can marry a katana? We're speaking about a kohen hedyet. The chashin and shemet tispata elov. We're worried about that since she's a katana, maybe she might be easily talked into being with another man. Ihachi Yisrael nami, right? If it's also Yisrael, you also have a problem. She's with other man. Says Gemara, no. Pitui katana oinesu. If a katana is talked into another man and does it willingly, she still has the halacha of an anusa. She still has the halacha of someone being forced. Since she doesn't have so much das, if she agrees to a union with another man, we don't consider it, she is straying away from her husband as an Eshes Ish. We consider it an act of anus. So very geschmack now. But anus be Yisrael Mishra Shari. So guys, let's go back to what did Rebbe Eliezer say? A kohen cannot marry katana. A kohen hedyet can marry katana because if another man would talk her into having relations with him, she would then not be considered an anusa. Anusa is asa to a kohen. Therefore, a kohen should not marry katana. Why could a Yisrael marry katana? Because Yisrael is able to stay with an anusa. So that would be one pshat. There's no question on that pshat. Another pshat, Rav Papa Amar. So that's Rav's pshat. Rav Papa Amar, the kohen gadol. Rabbi Eliezer was speaking about kohen gadol. For high tanahu, and it's the following tana, the Tanya, besula yachol. It says a kohen should marry besula. Kohen gadol should marry besula yachol katana tamalemi isha. It says isha. So which one is it? Is it a basula, an isha? What are you talking about? Isha yachol bageres. I might think of bageres, tamalayim a basula. So you got a problem. Who exactly are we talking about? Okay, tzad yatzim machal katnus ulachal bageres loy basa. Must be a girl who left katana but did not become a bageres. Who is that? That's a naira, guys. A naira is between the age of 12 and a day and 12 and 6 months. Before 12 and a day, she's a katana. After 12 and 6 months, she's a bageres. So we need someone to fit in between. So what are you speaking about? That he should marry a katana. The kohen gadol should marry a naira. So very geschmack. So we have two pshatim now. When Rabbi Eliezer said a kohen should marry a katana, according to Rava, it was speaking about a kohen hedyet. You should, and it's kolshken a kohen gadol. And should marry katana. Why? Because if she's talking to with being with other men, she'll be an anusa. According to Rav Papa, it's speaking about only a kohen gadol, and the reason why you can't marry her because a kohen gadol can only marry a naira. You can only marry a naira and not a katana. Rav Nachman Yitzchak Amar, Hai Tanahu, the Tanya, Besula, Ein Besula Ela Naira. Besula is a naira of Chenu Omer. It says by Rivka, by Naira Toivis Mara Ma'oid, right? Besula. It says by Rivka, she was a naira Toivis Mara Ba'od, and she was a besula. Rav Elazar Omer Panei Bala Pnuya Shalei Shemishus Asa Zaina. Rav Amram ein halacha Rabbi Elazar. Halacha we saw the other day is not like Rabbi Elazar. In fact, halacha is panei b'pliya. She is not a zayna. Now, this last remark over here, Naira was toivis mara ma'oid and she was a besula. What does that mean? Naira toivis mara ma'oid, she was a besula. So some very geschmack rate on this. There's a Tosfos over here that says, what do you mean she was a Naira guy? She was 3 years old. Rivka, how old was Rivka when she married Yitzchak? How old was she? 3. Why? Because Yitzchak was 37. Avram was informed by the Akedah. He was informed by the Akedah of the birth of that had given birth to Rivka, and he got married at 40. Pashas told us got married at 40, so she was 3. Tosfos makes the cheshbon based upon the number 133. There's a medrash that says that there were certain people who lived to 133. One was Kahas and one was Rivka. Rivka lived to the same amount of time as Kahas. So Tosfos does the biblical mathematics that how old was Rivka when Yaakov was born? Yaakov was Rivka ben Shish. Yitzchak was ben Shishim Shana B'Ledesai son. Okay, so if you start from 63, you're going to be 11 years short to 133. You're going to be 11 years short. How do you figure? If you're 63, she at the time of she would have been she would have been 23 at the time. She would have been 23 at the time she gave birth, right? 23 at the time he gave birth. If he got married at 40 and he was 60, so she would be 23 years old. How old was Yitzchak at the brachas? He was 63 years old. 14 years Shem Ve'eva would make him 77 years old, right? 77 years old. He was on the road for 22 years, and he found out that Rivka died on the way back. Elon Bachus. So how would that make it? 77, 22 would make it 99, right? So from 133 to 99, right? You need another 34 years, right? You need 34 years, not 23. The difference between 34 and 23 is 11. So therefore, she was 14 years old, according to Tosfos. Be aware, this Tosfos is in the car that she was 14 years old. Now, just another, since it just popped into my head, this is a crazy thing. By all the other of us, it never says she was a basula. The only one was Rivka. It doesn't say she was a basula by Rachel. It doesn't say basula by Leah. It doesn't say none of the Imois that says she was basula. It says only by Rivka. So a fantastic pshat based upon a Melecha Shleima. It said, Kisi Hadam. Kisi Hadam. Why do you do Kisi Hadam by a chaya and a bird? That's the only thing. You don't do it by an animal. You do Kisi Hadam by a chaya and a bird. So the Melecha Shleima brings from a kol boy. It's in Chulin. It's in the first Chulin in Kisi Adam. He brings a pshat that's half of a fella, and I applied it over here. He said that when Rivka fell off, it says Vatibel Rivka me al gomel. She came off. What happened was she lost a basulam. Then she lost a basulam. She fell down and she lost a basulam. When Yitzchak was with Rivka, he didn't find any blood. He was chayish that Eliezer was with her. It was chayish Eliezer. They went back to the place where they met, and there was a lion guarding it, and that makes sure that no animal lipped up the blood. And that's chus of keeping the blood uncovered. Therefore, we go ahead and do covered. So I want to say pshat over here. That's why he has to say over here besula. Why are you saying she's a basula? Because she's the only one that there was a question about a basulam. So the Torah is testifying that Naira, she was a Naira, but guess what? She was a basula because there was a question on a basulam. Have a great evening. And tomorrow morning, share will be at 9:30. Tomorrow morning, share will be at 9:30. Very geschmack of Gemara, the sugya peer verivya. Have the sugya peer review, sugya peer verivya.
The pshat Rabbi Eliezer that she's an onus. That's maybe that's the source lahavdil of the goyim have something called statutory rape. That it's not possible for a child below a certain age to have das. It's considered rape.
Okay.
All comes from us.